In most games, what you hear is just as important as what you see. While sound effects and voice acting can be a bit underappreciated in any given game, one aspect of any game's sound design is very much adored when done right: the music. An environment, a scripted sequence, or a combat encounter can become much more interesting when music is used correctly. In Half-Life 2, there is a good balance between high-intensity fight scenes with equally intense and action-packed music, suspenseful and exploratory segments with atmospheric music, but what Half-Life 2 also offers are quite a few downtime segments with no music at all. The placement of music is important to enhance the feedback the player is getting from the game. But what is equally important is to remove the music once in a while to enable the player to relax and take in the game world around them. Using music correctly can help the game to establish cognitive flow, a very important thing in game design, which will be covered in a future video of mine, so please stay tuned for that. Music is used very wisely in this game, and while I wouldn't say that music is used sparingly, there are relatively long segments which do not feature music. Those are very refreshing and appreciated after longer action-heavy scenes. Sure, music constantly playing can work very nicely, especially when the music is dynamic, but most of the times it doesn't give the player many opportunities to just sit back and relax. The dynamic music used in action or horror games that plays constantly is good for those games, because they rely on suspense and action of any kind. But Half-Life 2 does not feature non-stop action or overly long horror segments. The game relies heavily on atmosphere. Come to think of it, Half-Life 2 may feature one of the most depressing game worlds in any game ever. Humanity was enslaved, and many members of your species are turned into synthetic beings. You fight alongside aliens that maybe still hold a grudge against free men and might not have the best interest of your species in mind. The suppression field set up by the Combine prevents humans to raise offspring, and there is a high likelihood that the Earth might be a lost cause, due to the Combine harvesting countless amounts of resources from our home planet. To fit this heavy and existential subject matter, the slower music in the game tends to sound a bit melancholic, sad, or hopeless, while the rhythmic, action-packed music fits the dystopian and hopeless world Half-Life 2 presents to the player as well. Hopeless. A word that describes Half-Life 2's world perfectly. So the atmosphere is spot on, and the world is a dystopian and heavily pessimistic vision of our future. But now let's delve a bit deeper and explore what the music of the game has on offer. First, let's look at some technical aspects of the soundtrack by checking out the metadata. Speaking of Half-Life 2 alone, not the episodes, 32 tracks were labeled as Half-Life 2 or HL2, while 15 tracks were labeled with HL1, Half-Life 1. Meaning that 15 tracks were reused from the previous game. While the music sounds really good overall, the files the game has on offer are really compressed and thus don't have the best sound quality imaginable. Almost every single track in the game files is a 2-channel 128 kilobit per second MP3 file. Doesn't sound too exciting, does it? In-game this is no problem, you have other things to worry about, and the music isn't the focus of the sound in any given scene, so you don't really look into how good the sound of the music is in-game. But if you want to listen to the music outside of the game, the quality is a bit lacking. To be fair, the files aren't that heavily compressed that the tracks sound like distorted abominations, but those files definitely would be offensive to an audiophile's hi-fi enthusiast ears. Curiously, there even is a single file that is a lossless WAV file with a bitrate of over 700 kilobit per second, and some music tracks are tagged as being blues genre music. Most of the soundtrack is made by Kelly Bailey, but there are some more tracks in the Stingers folder. Stingers are musical little cues that normally are under half a minute long in Half-Life's case. So we got 5 stingers from Half-Life 1, and they are in the MP3 format as well, with the same compression as before. But look at that, there are 2 more stingers, Industrial Stinger 1 and 2. And those are made by a completely different person, named Cheecken Lee. Interestingly enough, those tracks are lossless WAV files with a bitrate of over 700 kilobit per second, even though they have a similar length compared to Kelly's stingers. The choice of formats and compression almost seems nonsensical, or at least a bit confusing. What is worth mentioning too, Cheecken Lee's tracks were dated with the year 2002, while every HL1 and HL2 track was dated with 2003 or 2004. Interesting. When we look at the music itself though, we have got quite an interesting soundtrack here. It is varied, with various ambient tracks, suspenseful ones and very rhythmic, fast-paced ones. Kelly Bailey's style consists of combining the sounds of traditional instruments with electronic, synthesized sounds. This musical style is very iconic, and Kelly managed to create a soundtrack that is not only unique, but also exceptionally good. The music helps build Half-Life 2's unique atmosphere, especially when atmospheric tracks are playing. Music tracks like Lab Practicum, one of my personal favorites, reflect the game the best. The drawn-out and slowed-down bong sounds in conjunction with the wah-wah synths in the background bring forth a weirdly nostalgic feeling. Like Lab Practicum, the ambient tracks tend to be haunting and feature many tampered samples, like reversed cymbals, drawn-out and slowed-down sound recordings, and of course the synthesized electronic samples. They are pleasant to listen to, but at the same time those are rather sad compositions, reminding the player that Earth once was a better place, free from the totalitarian rule of the Combine. Action-rich tracks like Hard Fought have many similarities with the ambient music when it comes to instruments and sound samples. Many recordings have been altered extremely through reverses, speed-ups and slowdowns, and in addition to that, various electronic sounds can be heard too. Music that plays in combat is way more rhythmic and bass or percussion based. Those tracks use very dark synths, various drum kits, and droning background noises. The dystopian feel and hopelessness is never lost in any of these tracks. Well, with some exceptions. Maybe I am looking into things a bit too much, but I have noticed that the music also could symbolize the Combine's actions. Considering that they use synthesized beings, half living, half machine, as living weaponry and vehicles is a very haunting thought. The music here too is a mix from traditional instruments paired with electronic sounds that were artificially made. Might not have a lot of relevance, or maybe wasn't directly intended like that, but it's just a small observation I wanted to present to you as well. Everyone has their favorite tracks, of course me included. I just have difficulties to pick a single favorite track, so I will show you the compositions that I like the most in the game. Triage at Dawn plays right after you leave Ravenholm and find other Resistance members. The composition sounds triumphant and is one of the very few tracks that sounds hopeful. The composition is also one of the more orchestral-based tracks, which doesn't feature as many electronic influences as the other compositions in the soundtrack. Triage at Dawn seems to be an agreed-upon fan favorite amongst Half-Life fans. Diabolical Adrenaline Guitar is one of the reused compositions from Half-Life 1. The predecessor featured a lot of very similarly styled music and is a great example of amazing 90s video game soundtracks. Nuclear Mission Jam also is a reused composition and features a rather long build-up and a satisfying rhythmic beat with fast-paced synths. A perfect track to fight Combine soldiers with. And last but not least, the Innsbruck Experiment. Another fast-paced track featuring digitally altered drum samples and drawn-out haunting vocals. This purely percussion-based track really makes combat much more enjoyable and builds tension very effectively. Half-Life 2's music. While Valve may have failed perfecting the weapon sounds, they definitely nailed the feeling and placement of the music in Half-Life 2, and the soundtrack is more than enjoyable when listening outside of the game. Fans of electronic music will definitely enjoy Kelly Bailey's compositions in-game, but also outside of the game as well, which makes Half-Life 2's soundtrack In one word, excellent.